Did you feel like a pirate when you were studying?
I did. I did. I even said to you guys that I kind of want to live in ghost ship land for a while, and just all of my topics will be about ghost ships. So why don't we start with how the curse actually began, okay? At the heart of the Flying Dutchman legend stands Captain Hendrik van der Decken, a fearless, determined seafarer who embarked on a fateful voyage around Cape of Good Hope at the southern tip of Africa. This treacherous passage was notorious for the this is a weird word, tempestuous seas and perilous navigation, making it a crucible for sailors of the time. Captain van der Decken's ambition and determination to round this treacherous cape at all costs would set the stage for the curse that would forever haunt this ship and crew. So in reality, this guy, Captain van der Decken, not a good dude. He is kind of like his name's Van der Decken.
What a goofy ass name.
This is a very Dutch name.
Yeah. It's incredibly very Dutch. But through my research in this, I looked high and low. There is no actual documented account of this man existing. So he might be a fictional guy. We do not know because there's no real official documentation that this man ever really existed. However, there are multiple stories of how the curse of the Dutchman happened, which we will get into. But the most prominent one is about this gentleman, not even a gentleman. He was a horrible person if he existed. Captain Van der Decken. He was egotistical, headstrong, loved to travel, had no real consideration for his crew or their well-being based off of my research. He was kind of an all-around douchebag.
It was like a trade ship captain or like a pirate captain?
Yes.
Or
he was a member of the Dutch East India.
Oh, the East India Company? Okay.
Well, the Dutch East India Trading Company, because there were multiple cells.
Oh, yeah. Right. There was different branches.
And Captain Flounder Muffin was in the Dutch division.
Yes, Captain Flounder Muffin was in the Dutch division. And they actually would compete with each other, and it would get pretty volatile, where they'd even fight each other sometimes. And I don't know, the Dutch East Trading Company is basically the Amazon of back then.
So there's no documentation of Captain Bork, but is there documentation of the ship itself?
That wasn't even close.
Yes, there is several documentations, which I will get into. There's a few accounts of when the ship was spotted. The latest one being spotted in around World War II. Call back to our World War II episode that just dropped today, or yet a week ago. And so Nazi submariners were the last to see it, but we'll get into that later. So
that was a Muppet joke, by the way. I just wanted to throw that out there.
What was the Muppet joke?
I said Captain Bork because the Swedish chef. It's close to Dutch.
Bjork. Yeah, Hendrik van der Decken.
This all sounds made up at this point.
Okay, well, yeah. I mean, this is it's seafaring stories, so yeah, of course it does.
Van der Decken is not the name.
It wasn't a flying pirate ship.
I mean,
it wasn't flying. First off,
is his name Van der Decken translate to Captain Dickhead?
I'd like you all to look at the banner below my picture right now and read this word.
All right, Peanut. All right. I was waiting for this to fucking happen the minute I would record, because this is a long time coming, because I gave you there's that period of time where Steven, you were just doing episode after episode, and it's because Brian and I were going through turbulence. So I will not get upset. You do your worst at this point.
I had a couple friends ask me, is this podcast just you being bullied the entire time? And I was like, no, I actively want to be there.
I really do. I hope so. Anyway,
I really, really, really want to be there. You can move the gun now.
All right, let's get back to it, buddy. Sorry.
No, you're good, dude. No,
right.
No, you're good.
So Captain Wonder Griffin,
bad
dude,
Captain Dickhead. So he was very based off of what I read. He was very irreverent. He was very much, like a typical middle-aged white man who thinks he's better than everybody. And the pivotal moment in the legend occurs as the ship encounters a violent storm while attempting to round the Cape of Good Hope. The crew gripped by fear.
Where's the Cape of Good Hope? That's like the southern tip of Africa, right?
I want to say yes. I did study the maps, but it was very hard to kind of like keep in line where it was.
Did you feel like a pirate when you were studying?
I did.
You were like-
I did. I even said to you guys that I kind of want to live in ghost ship land for a while, and just all my topics will be about ghost ships, for a bit, because there are a ton of them that popped up. The Flying Dutchman obviously is the first big one, but there are a lot of others that I want to cover.
He just wants to talk about longitude and latitude, and just
I'm a big longitude latitude guy. that's why they call me Longitude Latitude Z. They've never called me that. Anyway, so he's sailing through the Cape of Good Hope. The crew, gripped by fear and desperation, implores their captain to turn back and seek shelter on land. But Vanderdecken's unwavering resolve and hubris prevail. Allegedly, he utters the blasphemous words, and these are the ones that keep popping up in the story, the main story of the Flying Dutchman. I will round this cape, even if it takes me until doomsday. This act of defiance against the forces of nature and perceived challenge to the divine will become the catalyst for this ship's curse. So basically, he says this, and his crew is like, no, let's not do this. Let's not do this. Please, let's not do this. And he says, fuck you, we're doing it anyway. I will sail to the ends of the earth, even if I reach till Judgment Day. Apparently, there are two ways that there are a few ways that the story went down, but the main one is that the devil himself heard it, and he basically just called it and said, like, all right, that's the deal. Then you will sail the seas for all eternity, and until you find a lover, is the rundown of it.
I'm drawing some parallels here. Captain Blender Dickens is something of a maverick himself. He's a lot like our Wild Bill Donovan from last week.
I just have a lot of questions about the Devil's Time management system, because here he is just listening to some random douchebag on a boat, and then he goes down to Georgia and challenges somebody to a fiddle contest.
And then he taught Robert Johnson at the Crossroads to play guitar. Which I want to do that episode, by the way.
He's just like, he's not really running hell. He's just hanging out, just waiting for a random person that speaks loud enough, and he's like, haha, he's
a lazy salesman waiting for prospects.
This is how you end up possessed.
Yeah, exactly.
The devil.
So with this particular story, there was a supposed mutiny that happened with him going into the storm, and the leader of the mutiny basically declared the mutiny, and Vanderdecken pulled out his dagger and stabbed him.
Excuse me, everyone.
Oh, hold on.
Excuse me.
Bringing the committee.
Ding, ding, ding. Ding, ding, ding.
The committee has formed.
I would like to declare mutiny.
I second the mutiny. That means that the motion passes. We are officially in mutiny. Who's going to be the leader?
Oh, wait. How many yays do we have for mutiny? 6.
Look, this is the start of where the bureaucrats really started taking over. This is the East India Trading Company, after all.
I love that, like this image in my head that Vanderdecken, waited until they calculated and they're like, it's officially mutiny, and he's like, now, and the knife comes out.
Yeah, and then he stabbed him and then immediately threw him overboard. So he threw the leader. So, if you're imagining that, the page shows up, or the leader's like, yes, we are mutinying. And then he stabs him, throws him overboard. And then he declares that. And therefore, he curses his entire crew.
Also,
so that's...
shouldn't he have a sword? Like, he went with a knife? I mean, I guess it's a little faster.
I mean, yeah, I don't know. Like, maybe the knife was maybe he was in close proximity, because you're not going to draw your sword if they're 3 feet away from you. Maybe you could, I guess. But
classic pirate blunder.
That's why he was called Blunder Vanderdecken. He wasn't.
Just somehow you rolled with it, and you were like, I'm just going to say things now.
I did. That's what I do. Another story is the divine punishment one. The curse placed upon Vanderdecken and his crew could be a divine punishment for their arrogance and blasphemy. Another story is that he basically pulled out a crucifix and he cursed God himself and said that do your worst. I will do. And God essentially came out of the heavens, ascended from the sky, and put a beam of light on the ship and said, all right, fine, you're being a little bitch, and therefore you're cursed. So there's another one that the devil cursed him, and that God cursed them. And
so he pulled the Lieutenant Dan. That's what he did. He pulled a Lieutenant Dan, and it went poorly for him this time around.
100%. Like a very irreverent man. That's the other version of the story. So those are the two primary ones. There is another story with another name, with a captain. I think it's Captain Knock, who is also attached to this Dutchman story. But for the most part, in mainstream research media, it's usually going to be Vanderdecken, who is going to be the captain of the Dutchman. The Eternal Punishment, as it's called, or the Curse section, would basically be the transformation of the ship into the eerie Flying Dutchman. Shrouded in ghostly light and with its sails in tatters, it is a central element of the legend. This spectral vessel has become a symbol of maritime superstition, and in its sightings are often considered being harbingers of doom. Sailors who have encountered the Flying Dutchman describe it as a chilling and unsettling sight, a ghost ship condemned to roam the seas for all eternity. So, these guys are now cursed. They are doomed to sail for all eternity. Meaning that when they initially got cursed, and we're going to go with it for the purpose of the episode, we're going to go with that the devil curse was what happened, because there are multiple accounts of this. But for the consistency of the episode, we're going to go with this. They basically got cursed, and they're like, okay, and nothing happened. The storm cleared, and Vanderdecken's crew, they survived, and they're like, oh, that's fine. So the first port that they try to sail to, they go about their business relatively undisturbed, and they try to sail into a port. They see the port.
They were like, welcome back, Captain Gander Napkin.
Yep.
You're not a ghost at all, I'm sure of it.
Yeah, there's a sign. There's a big intervention sign, above it. But as they sailed closer to the island or to the port, the distance never seemed to close. And that's when the realization struck Vanderdecken and the crew that we're cursed. And yeah. Okay. So this man, in his hubris, in his arrogance, cursed the devil, or cursed.
He was like, that one's on me, guys. Maybe you guys should have called the mutiny.
Oh, sorry, I killed that one guy that was in charge of you. Maybe you should have elected another one. Just to be safe.
They don't show this in the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, or like because there are some loose like tie-ins from because I'm sure most people have heard of the Flying Dutchman from the Pirates of the Caribbean movies.
Yeah, wasn't I'm trying to wrap my Pirates of the Caribbean timeline, because it's been a while since I've watched them, but wasn't the captain of the Flying Dutchman in there Davy Jones?
Yeah,
Cthulhu himself.
And that's actually two legends that kind of like slowly kind of melded together in a way.
Gotcha.
Again, this is all maritime stories. This is all hearsay and like tales, and like so they kind of bleed together in a way.
Every story in maritime legend was told over ridiculous amounts of ale, so it is told entirely by unreliable narrators.
Yeah, and it's also like the longest game of telephone ever, because it's just hopping from port to ship to port to ship to port to ship.
Yeah.
Like by the time it actually gets anywhere.
Like 2 years later, like, oh, there's a ghost ship. You mean the least threatening ghost there has ever been?
Yeah. But
it isn't so.
But it's actually incredibly threatening, though. Because every time
what is it going to hit you with ghost cannonballs? Like, I don't
Well, it was supposed to be a ship. Like if you see the ghost ship, a bad omen was about to happen to you and your crew. Anybody who laid eyes on it, it would like something bad would happen. There's an account that does happen that we will get into later, but I'm going to kind of circle back for a second, where I'll go into detail about some of the stuff that did happen when people saw the ship.
This feels like Mothman all over again. Like, sorry, honey, I got gonorrhea. I saw the Flying Dutchman. Like, oh, scurvy. Yeah, you saw the Flying Dutchman. What'd you expect? Like, it feels like the ultimate scapegoat again. Like, just like the Mothman. I'm also entirely salty about the Mothman.
Well, look, it wasn't necessarily gonorrhea, but like people, like in one instance, a guy fell from a crow's nest, and in another instance, like a bunch of people, like, yeah. So we'll get into it.
You rolled that off your tongue so well, like that's not the first time you've said, well, it's not totally gonorrhea.
It's not 100% gonorrhea, but
it's a little bit of two things, actually.
Black Plague.
All right. Well, while the focus of the legend often centers around Captain Vanderdecken and his doomed ship, the crew of the Flying Dutchman also plays a crucial role in the tale. In various adaptations, the crew members are depicted as ghostly, undead figures, or if by Disney, fish people, cursed to serve the accursed vessel. Their existence is one of perpetual torment, and they are unable to find solace in the rest. Some versions of the legend suggest that the crew members are themselves condemned souls, each with their own dark past and sins that contribute to the eternal punishment. So as you said, Ryan, earlier, like, my bad, like, this guy now has to sail for eternity with his crew constantly weighing the most massive fuck up of his entire career.
Mm-hmm.
Could you just
Thanks a lot, Captain Banana Snacking.
Yeah, and they can't kill each other. They can't mutiny. They can't leave the ship, because that whole part of the ship, part of the crew thing that they did in the Disney movies was actually kind of rooted in this myth, because it is documented that, like, the legend is, or in the tales, that they were ghosts. They weren't exactly fish people in the stories, but they were ghosts. But you would eventually become basically part of the ship.
They weren't totally fish people in Pirates of the Caribbean either. They were just like decomposed with like mollusk and stuff.
Well, there's that hammerhead shark guy.
Oh yeah, we don't talk about him.
Oh, most of the guys just had a bad case of barnacles, which in Disney is, code, right? Yeah.
Cool. Code for what, Steven?
I don't know. Use your imagination. It's a fucking Disney movie.
Most of Disney's codes are fairly anti-Semitic. So I don't know what you're getting at.
Good old Walt, classic Walt.
Oh my lord, this is
man.
I'm trying not to be too rough on the Flying Dutchman. Like, I want to buy that there's a ghost ship out there.
Oh, it's clearly a tall tale of myth, but I mean, like, the idea is cool that, like, this is something that all these seafaring, whether it be traders or Royal Navies or pirates or whatever, were like deathly afraid of.
That's
right?
fair.
Like,
That's
because
fair.
Yeah, I mean, and sailors were, like, at least from what I've read and heard, that they were incredibly superstitious, and so because you see some shit on the sea, and you're on the fucking water, it does something to your fucking brain after.
Well, not only that, but in this time period, it's the equivalent. The sea is the equivalent to what space is to us. Like, this was all new, right?
Mhm.
Like, they're discovering lands that have never been discovered. It's like when we get to the point in space travel that we're finally like landing on other planets and shit, like on a regular base, finding new planet, we're gonna be like, holy shit, there's seafaring aliens and ghost ships. Like, you know what I mean?
I mean, it's a valid point.
Spaceships.
It's a valid point, and it kind of kept crews in line to a certain degree.
Anyway, the eternal punishment inflicted upon the Flying Dutchman and his crew taps into deep-seated fears and superstitions, as we've mentioned before, held by sailors throughout history. It serves as a cautionary tale, a reminder of the perils of the hubris and blasphemy at sea. The ship, forever adrift, is a symbol of the unpredictable and unforgiving nature of the ocean, where even the bravest and most determined mariners can find themselves ensnared in a web of supernatural consequences. In the segments ahead, we will delve deeper into the quest for redemption, cultural impact, enduring fascination with the legend of the Flying Dutchman. Now, I have a few accounts of sightings of the Flying Dutchman here. And I would love to, like, go through each of them. There's only a few of them. And then hear your thoughts on them. Okay, the first one that I have. Okay. The first one, in the late 19th century, the legend of the Flying Dutchman had already firmly taken root in the maritime folklore. One of the most documented sightings, this is actually like the biggest one, of the Phantom ship occurred in 1881 when Prince George of Wales, who would later become King George V of England, was aboard the HMS Bacchante during the royal tour. According to ship records and the accounts of the crew, as the HMS Bacchante sailed near Cape of Good Hope, a region notorious for its treacherous waters, the sailors spotted an eerie and ghostly vessel on the horizon. The mysterious ship was said to be illuminated by a ghostly light casting an otherworldly glow, red. Its sails were tattered and torn, and its crew appeared as spectral figures. The sightings of the Flying Dutchman by such reputable sources as a future king added a degree of credibility to the legend. The prince's account was recorded in the ship's log, and the story was widely circulated, further cementing the Flying Dutchman's place in maritime lore.
Oh, I forgot. This was in a time before they knew what fog was.
That's okay.
And
so
what
fog,
and how light reflects off of fog. Yeah, that makes sense.
So you guys aren't off.
Fire's pretty new.
You guys aren't off the mark 100% because
Yeah.
there is like a modern explanation to this, which I don't want to get into till the end because that'll spoil everything.
Mhm.
But him and 13 other crew members saw this, and upon seeing it, I believe it was this one where the guy who saw it initially with the in the crow's nest, he fell and died within like maybe the next half hour out of the crow's nest, and so yeah.
I'm just imagining he's got his big brown jug that's labeled XXX, and he's like, "Holy shit, go ship!"
Yeah,
I better tell everyone. It just falls over.
Well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about that because Stephen, you brought up earlier that this obviously, and then Ryan added to it like it's the biggest game of telephone, and everybody's fucked up on rum and ale and mead and everything, and they're telling these
What
stories.
else is there to do out there in the open seas?
It's actually one of the
Scrape
things.
off barnacles and drink rum.
Well, and that's the thing too is like
until ghost
a
stories.
lot of times sailors would end up with scurvy and stuff like that because they didn't get vitamin C and stuff like that. So they usually had like bread and gin was a pretty common combination in Europe at the time, and so everyone is just like off their rocker. And I feel a little bit like the king's word. I mean, like that's the thing. Did he get anybody to like draw a picture of what it looks like or anything like that? Like, did they get close enough to see the crew? Like,
No,
did they pass through the ship?
Who here amongst you can draw?
Also, look, if the king's like, look, a ghost ship, you're gonna be like, yes, sir, it is.
Yeah, how
yes,
high?
Sir.
You say jump, I say how high.
Yeah, it's just I understand the credibility because it's a prince or whatever the case is, but no one's gonna argue with royalty.
No, obviously not. Obviously not.
Like, oh, yep, totally ghost.
I mean, that's
totally
obviously
ghost
because royalty was on the ship, like the biggest account that kind of circulated. And generally, like when the people see the Dutchman, it generally brings incredibly bad weather. It's surrounded by this constant storm. They never see, like I wouldn't say never, but they almost never see it like up close. There is one case that I don't have listed here where a port actually saw what they supposedly thought was the Dutchman flying at sailing at full speed towards
See,
sailing at full
Got
speed. God damn it!
Read it.
Sailing at full speed towards the harbor, and everybody was panicking on shore, and then the ship just dissipated. And that was like the only account that I could personally find where the ship would get close enough for people, and then they just see it disappear out of nowhere. But that's not an official thing I've listed.
It's just funny to me that like it only appears in storms, and they're like, I can't believe we only saw that ship for a second, and now we don't see it anymore. And it's like, dude, there's a hurricane.
Look, I get it. We're all averagely smart in this day and age. If we were people back then, we'd be geniuses. We'd be leaders and rich.
Yeah, maybe.
Listen,
I drink a lot of rum back then too.
I play enough Sea of Thieves. I think I'm qualified to talk on this topic.
Oh,
No.
I agree.
No, you're not. I've seen you blow up more stuff in that game than anything else.
Like ghost ships.
I like ghost ships too. That's why I took this topic. Okay, I got another account. Okay, in the same year as Prince George's alleged sighting, the crew of the HMS Inconstant, a British Royal Navy vessel, also claimed to encounter the Flying Dutchman as they sailed near the Cape of Good Hope, because it apparently appears near the Cape of Good Hope the most, obviously, for obvious reasons. They were met with a sight that sent shivers down their spine. According to their accounts, the ghostly ship materialized out of the mist, its spectral form illuminated by an eerie light. The crew members described the vessel as having tattered, ragged sails, and its crew appeared as if they were eternally trapped in a state of despair. The figures on board of the phantom ship seemed to stare at the HMS Inconstant with the hollow, lifeless eyes. The crew of the HMS Inconstant watched in awe and trepidation as the apparition slowly vanished into the mist. This sighting added another layer of credibility to the Flying Dutchman legend as it came from multiple eyewitnesses on a military vessel. A military vessel!
So working on a boat is equivalent
Less
to
likely to be
retail
slush.
these days.
Working on a boat is equivalent to retail.
That's right. Dead, lifeless eyes as it floats by, staring at you. You're like, I need some help, and you just go,
Yep.
Okay, I'm gonna go find it myself. Don't look at me anymore. This same fucking vibe, but
It's the same dead stare that like a retail gives you during Black Friday. Oh man. So yeah.
Sorry, do you have this in a size 12 and a quarter?
oh, bro.
But yeah, so like now in the same year, second ship saw it. Like I heard this particular story personally, and I thought I was like, well, if they saw it, then I saw it too. And I've said this on the show before. I do believe that the human brain is capable of of incredible things, where it can make you see things that you are suggested to see or are looking for. It's like it's my whole take on like ghost hunters when they actively go and look for ghosts. Their brains are programmed, are in a prepositioned program state to look for something that's not actually there.
I won't get into it, but it brings up a topic that might even be worthy of its own episode. But I read this whole big study thing about the Mandela effect, and it kind of plays into that. It's like the brain like actively searches out what it wants to see, and
I feel it can also just be good old fashioned 19th century FOMO. Like somebody's like, I saw a ghost ship, and you're like, me too. Yeah, I would hate to miss that. So I clearly was there, and I saw it too. You know, it's like I say it kind of funny. Yeah, it's like it's the same thing, and it's honestly, for all my jokes, I do wish there was a ghost ship. Like I love the idea of like sea monsters and ghost ships roaming around. The ocean is fucking scary. Okay, angler fishes exist. All right,
colossal squid exists.
Yeah, you know so
it's yeah.
That's what I was gonna say. The bad shit crazy thing is like, the remote possibility that it could be real is actually there, because even with our modern 2023 technology, we can't find a plane when it goes down. We can't find a submarine when it goes down. Like there's like the oceans are vast, right? Like I mean,
there's an entire section of the ocean we can't explore because it goes so deep.
Yeah, and we know more about space than we know about the ocean. Like that's, which I know is a fact that's tossed around the internet a lot, but I fully believe it. And shit gets washed up on ocean shores all the fucking time that you're like, what the fuck is that? And I'm not saying that this ghost ship is real. Okay, I'm not. But on par with Steven, and as I've said in many episodes before, I wish it was. I hope it is, because it would make the world more interesting.
So can I ask a serious question? So you've read us a couple of accounts of different sightings of the Flying Dutchman now, and they were similar. They looked out, they saw the spectral ship kind of surrounded in a fog with spectral. But you also told us at the beginning of the episode that, or maybe in a chat, that you read hundreds of different accounts of different ghost ships and stuff. So what made them see this ghost ship and go, that's the Flying Dutchman, versus just any other ghost ship story?
So most of the other ghost ship stories didn't really come into, at least based off of what I've read, at the time when all these accounts were happening, the Flying Dutchman was the ghost ship story. It was like Sasquatch to us in America. It was like the big
Gotcha.
And so naturally people would like divert to that and be like, that's the Flying Dutchman. But then you'd get like, but then as time would go on, a bunch of other ship, like I'm sure you've heard about the game was based off of it. The SS Orang Medan showed up a few times. There's a lot of other ghost ships, and you'll probably see a lot more topics concerning ghost ships because they all had fascinating stories that I want to talk about. And but at the time when all these things were happening, it was kind of like the ghost story. It's like if you're in the woods, then you're going to blame everything on Sasquatch. If you're in Scotland by a lake, you're going to blame everything on the Loch Ness monster.
I blame everything on Sasquatch, no matter where I am.
I mean, I blame our economy on Sasquatch. I have my reasons.
I blame Sasquatch on the economy.
All right.
He couldn't afford to stay in the woods anymore. The real estate got too expensive, so he had to venture out.
I do have another account. This is actually my favorite account because it does cross into World War II a little bit. And we are currently running our World War II episode right now. Our last episode was about what was his name again, Ryan?
Wild Bill Donovan.
Please
go.
Please go check it out. You can check out a link right here. But the next one was a German submarine crew in 1939 that saw it. And the 20th century brought with it more reports of encounters with the Flying Dutchman. Even during the tumultuous times of World War II, in 1939, a German submarine crew operating in the waters off of Norway reported a chilling encounter with the legendary Phantom ship. According to their accounts, they spotted the ghostly vessel on the horizon, its outline becoming clearer as they approached. The ship was eerily illuminated by an otherworldly light, casting an unsettling glow in the dark waters. As the submarine drew nearer, the crew saw the tattered remains of sails and spectral figures on the ships. As the submarine drew nearer, the crew saw the tattered remains of sails and the spectral figures of the ship's crew. The crew of the German submarine watched in disbelief as the apparition slowly faded from view, leaving them in a state of shock. It was well known amongst sailors that those who saw the Flying Dutchman were often met with misfortune or death shortly afterward, which added an eerie dimension of this wartime sighting. Nothing happened. But
in my mind,
in my head canon,
in my mind,
well, they
this
lost.
was just a ship full of glowing foxes.
It was the ship that they had a glowing. It was the ship that had glowing foxes.
Cocaine's a hell of a drug.
Well, Steven, you remember like the whole glowing foxes, like when they were
Oh,
dumping foxes.
I do.
I mean, the only debunk of it is like this was in Norway, that was in Japan, you know. So
yeah, you know, we might not have been the only ones doing it.
It was a trendy
Everybody
thing.
can read a book.
Yeah, irradiated foxes are like the fidget spinners of the 1940s.
Jesus.
So yeah. So that was like the latest like actual sighting, and then there was the whole sighting of the SS Orang Medan in 1947, which people connected with the Flying Dutchman. But that I feel like that has an episode in itself, which I will tackle. I don't want to kind of get too much into the SS Orang too much. So there have been a few sightings, but there really hasn't been a documented sighting since, and there is kind of a reason to it because a lot of science has debunked it. We're getting to kind of like the end where I'm like, maybe it wasn't real after all section, but yeah, people claim to see it. But the only misfortune I really like read about was the guy falling from the crow's nest. Again, Maritime story where, yeah, they say this is a thing that happens, but it's like the chair episode we did. It's like, if you sit in the chair 30 years from now, you'll have a heart attack. You know, like that could be applicable to anything.
I almost forgot about
this. This just reeks of, the story that keeps your people in line. You know, it's the thing that people fear, so they don't really kind of fight back against certain treatment and things like that. It's meant to keep people under control.
I just think that ship captains were just as superstitious as their crew, though.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at earlier, and that's why the way I lean is that they were on these ships for months, years at a time, and nothing going on except just socializing with your fellow crewmates and working on the ship, right, and drinking. And the only thing that passed the time is just to tell stories. At some point, you're going to run out of like actual stories and you're just going to start making stuff up for fun.
Yeah.
Like that's their form of entertainment. They don't have TV. They probably can't read if they even had books. A lot of them, right?
They had books. I mean, most of the time, captains.
Sorry, I'm thinking pirates, not so much like the trading company.
Okay, well, but most of the time, a lot of captains did have the ability to read maps.
Oh yeah, and they had like vast libraries and shit.
Yeah. Captains were captains for a
Our flag means death. Season 2 coming soon.
Ooh, I cannot wait. So yeah, I agree.
Just collect that Amazon check.
Because we're in a range, like we've done a lot of like ghost story things where like you're like, oh, this ghost, and then ghost hunters go and see it and everything. But when it comes to like maritime stories, like there's an incredible amount of superstition involved with it. And so that does like get my skeptic brain churning a bit more. Again, I hope that there is a ghost ship out there that's fucking people up, just because it would be interesting. But there is an explanation that scientists have kind of proven what people saw back then.
All right, hit me with the sad but true thing.
While the legend of the Flying Dutchman has been long associated with supernatural curses and ghostly apparitions, some modern scholars and scientists propose a more rational explanation of the mysterious sightings of the phantom ship. This perspective suggests that certain this perspective suggests that certain atmospheric conditions and optical illusions may contribute to the phenomenon. One such explanation centers around the idea of Fata Morgana. Fata Morgana,
familiar.
it's a mirage. It's a type of mirage that can happen in multiple different environments, climates. It happens very often over oceans. But Fata Morgana mirage, named after the sorceress Morgan Le Fay from Arthurian legend, is a complex and intriguing optical phenomenon that occurs when light rays are refracted or bent as they pass through the layers of varying temperatures in the atmosphere. This bending of light can create mirages that appear as distorted and elevated images of distant objects, often at sea.
I wasn't expecting a science lesson. It's cool.
Well, yeah. So like, I'm sure like you've seen standard mirages like in cinema and documentaries and everything. It does
usually in the desert. But it makes sense. It makes sense. I mean, there's nothing more reflective almost than water. So
yeah, and a lot of these phenomenons that happen, like we can even like take into account like Aurora Borealis. So we can take apart the light beams that happen. I think it's in winter climates in Norway and temperate zones. They appear to come from the grounds. People like they view that as a spectral or a or a phenomenal or a paranormal instance. When in reality, it's just light science and light refraction, and so that does disillusion the story a little bit. But there is a part of me, and me especially being a skeptic, where I'm literally holding on to dear life that there is a ghost ship sighting. Ghost ships are a thing. So while this has been somewhat proven, I'm holding on to dear life that that's not what they saw. So
yeah, in my head, it seems like the way you described it, or the way they described it, I should say, is like a spectrally surrounded in like a reddish light. It was red, right?
Yeah. That was.
So I'm thinking like a normal ship is coming by. They have all their little lanterns around the edges of the boat lit, which give off like an orangish reddish hue. They're surrounded by fog. The fog is going to just keep refracting that red light, and and you're not going to be able to make out the people. They're going to look very fuzzy and somewhat spectrally themselves, with the light reflecting off them in the fog as well. I don't know. It just seems like, holy shit, that's scary. It's probably the Flying Dutchman. It's probably a ghost ship.
Exactly.
Because that's going to make a cool story for later when I tell my buddies.
And that's a sad thing. You go for it, Steve.
Well, the overall thing is like I'm kind of like sharing my overall feelings on the Flying Dutchman. Is like I still stand by the feeling that like I'd love for that to be a real thing, but there's a lot of stuff to make fun of and like question. But we also live in a time of everyone having a freaking camera in their pocket, and lots of people traveling. You never know when something could turn up to say, hey, guess what, motherfuckers? There actually is a ghost ship out there with some creepy looking dudes. But in the meantime, the best thing that we've gotten out of it is the Pirates of the Caribbean film. So
yeah, and I do love that those films exist, because I love the trilogy as a whole. Like, and I view the trilogy, and the other movies are fine, but I view the trilogy like as a good introduction to what this is. I don't think anybody really thought the Flying Dutchman was a ghost ship until those movies came out. And in reality, they just associate with Davy Jones, which there is a theory that Davy Jones being the captain of that, to like touch on that a little bit, is that it came from Jonas from the Bible, and mixed with another with a character who was a pirate, and then through that game of telephone,
Captain Davy.
Yeah, or Captain Davy or Captain David, and then eventually it just through random stories, which you can look into this if you want later, and if you have more information, please comment below. And if I missed anything, because we try to keep this as short, as condensed as possible, but the theory is that it was mixed between two names, and it eventually evolved into Davy Jones. In the TLDR version, though. I know. Anyway, to wind this down a little bit, the Flying Dutchman serves as a cautionary tale for sailors, warnings of the perils of pride and blasphemy at sea. Again, the control thing that you mentioned, Stephen. Encounters with the ghostly ship are often seen as bad omens, and superstitions abound about the consequences of sighting the phantom vessel. The legend underscores the unpredictability and unforgiving nature of the ocean, where even the bravest mariners can find themselves ensnared in a web of supernatural consequences. So,
dude, scary.
It's spooky. It's spooky, like, because the water, like, I have thalassophobia. Like, open water terrifies me. Being on boats.
Oh, I thought that's where you were scared of phallus objects.
That too. That's penis phobia. So no, like, to me, like, it was kind of an eerie research for me, you know, if that makes any sense.
If you have phallophobia, how do you pee?
You tuck it in. You tuck it in the back. I don't know.
Anyways, this is a great ending to an
Speaking
episode.
of Davy Jones, he tucked it in the back.
All right, but real quick, in the end, whether one views the Flying Dutchman as a ghostly apparition or an optical illusion, the themes of redemption, eternal punishment, and the human condition continue to resonate. The story's enduring appeal lies in its ability to provoke thought, inspire creativity, and remind us the enduring mysteries the sea holds. The Flying Dutchman, whether real or imagined, remains a symbol of the vast and unpredictable world beneath the waves, where the legends, myths, and maritime mysteries continue to captivate our imaginations.
They do. I mean, that's why you chose this story. That's why we love this story.
Yeah,
that's why we love things like Pirates of the Caribbean, and
this is why
the first thing they put in a game like Sea of Thieves was ghost ships, because I mean, people love this stuff. It's just it's a really fun, cool idea.
That's really why I don't go sailing on the ocean.
Yeah, it just really ties into that whole, like, it makes shit just interesting and fun, and whether you believe it or not, like I said, I want to believe it. But I'm a man of science, and the Mirage thing seems plausible to me. But God, I hope I'm on the ocean one day and I just see a ship. You know, it would be cool, because then I could immediately come back on the episode and talk about it. But,
yeah, absolutely. I want to hear the story. I want to listen to you ramble on about a ghost ship and skeleton crew members. Looking forward to it.
Anyway, but that was the Flying Dutchman, gentlemen. Do you have any final thoughts before we wrap up our episode?
Honestly, I've shared a lot of my opinions about the Flying Dutchman. All jokes aside, looking forward to the day that someone proves me wrong. Until then, it's a scary story for sailors that don't really exist anymore, and it will remain so, just in the past.
In your time, were you ever, like, what was your time in the mill? Like, what was your area?
They couldn't get me on a damn boat. I was the Air Force. Like, I'm more scared of, like, ghost airplanes at this point. Like, that's I'm not worried about.
Are ghost planes a thing? Ooh, we should look into that. Ooh, that'd be
yes,
cool.
We should. Maybe next time we'll talk about a ghost plane. Sounds awesome.
Ryan, do you have any final thoughts?
No, man, great job. This is a really fun story. I'm glad you went with this one. I know you got another really cool one in the chamber too, right?
Yeah. The next one I have in the chamber, it'll be after your next World War II one, because we're kind of alternating them at this point. We have a 3-part World War II series that Ryan has started. That was our episode last week, and then this week, or the next week, will be another one. And then after that, I have
we're talking Mo Berg.
We're talking Mo Berg,
player.
Yeah.
International spy.
I don't know what that means at all.
Oh, it's
Tune
a
in
great
next week,
story.
and you will.
Hooray! I will.
Make sure
I'll
you
be
subscribe,
here.
Stephen.
Okay. Yes.
But then after that episode of Mo Berg, we're going to be doing H.H. Holmes, the first officially like what was considered the first serial killer. So yeah,
Right in time for spooky season.
right in time for
Yeah.
spooky season. Yeah. Anyway, everybody, thank you for watching this episode of Chaotic Underground. I'm your host, E. Diggity. Joining me is Stephen Bonsai Bandit, and then we have
Bye.
Ryan Damask here. Please check out our merch. If you love the show, please tell all your friends. If you hate the show, keep your fucking mouth shut. That being said, have a good night.
Bye.